What up, guys? It's Dani and Dave LaMartina. We're both getting ready to shows right now. I'm a little over 6 weeks out from the Olympia. Dave is
11 and a half weeks out from Nationals.
We're going to hit a push session here today with a primary chest focus. It's going to be a little change from my normal session. I'm going to kind of hang out with Dave a little bit. We haven't gotten to train upper together, since I was in prep for Chicago Pro. So it's been a minute. It's going to be really fun to be able to come back together. I don't know if there's anyone I really love training with as much as I love training with Dave. So it's going to be a good day. I'm going to go get a little bit of blood flow work in. Since I'm changing the session structure for me a little bit, I usually start with the hammer incline press, and I do like a top set and then a rest pause or double drop set there before I come into my dumbbell pressing. I'm not going to do that today, but I just want to get a little bit of blood flow before I start with dumbbell pressing, mostly so that my shoulders are stable. I tend to find that, especially in the bottom of a press, my shoulders get a little squirrely. So if I can find the area to kind of get a lot of the muscles that actually stabilize the joint to co-activate together before dumbbell pressing, it just really helps me have a good session. So degrees of freedom a joint has, meaning like the more points of motion it can move in, generally the more stability becomes a limiting factor for a lot of people. So especially something like a dumbbell press where you're having to stabilize the weight, there's not a machine stabilizing it for you. In a joint like the shoulder that has also a lot of inherent motion as a ball and socket, for me, I like to have some stability in the joint before I start pressing. Stability will always precede force production. I tend to see that a lot of women in particular have a little bit more of kind of that need for stability than someone like Dave, who needs a little bit more kind of that opening up for him to actually get into full range of motion. So this is probably one of the biggest differences I see when I'm coaching men and women, is that women tend to need a little bit more stability work before starting. A lot of the men that I coach tend to need something that's going to allow them to really open up, get the joint moving, let the muscles actually eccentrically orient, kind of open up a little bit more and stretch a little bit. So a little bit different demand. Now, I can tell I'm a little off today. I'm going to test my shoulder rotation real quick. People kind of forget that in a pressing movement, like a dumbbell press, you actually need to be able to rotate your shoulder. As the ball sits back in the socket, it has to be able to roll and spin and glide. So if you're limited in that internal or external rotation or horizontal abduction, it's really hard to get full range of motion. I can tell I'm limited here today, so I'm going to test it and then correct it really quickly. So there's my right. Past that, the shoulder rolls forward, and you can see I get a little bit of shearing here. My left, no problem. So I'm just going to do one really fast corrective. Just looking at the rib cage. Anyone who's listened to the Troponin episodes knows that you say the word rib cage and I get like really excited. My eyes kind of lit up a little bit. I'm going to show you why. All I'm going to do is facilitate a little bit of rib cage counter rotation via serratus, and then we'll recheck my shoulder motion. So I'm just using my breathing to pull my rib cage back a little bit. We'll recheck my shoulder motion now. So yeah, really quick change there. So now that I've opened up that range, I want to stabilize it and get a little bit of a pump. So people always think about cranking on the joint, and a lot of times if you just address the surface the joint's sitting on, you're going to get a lot of the range of motion correctives that you need anyway. Feel pretty good today. Famous last words. So the rib cage thing I was doing, for me, and again, this is because I've tested myself and I'm a big nerd, I know my rib cage likes to rotate one direction way better than the other. And the direction the rib cage is rotated is going to change how the shoulder blade fits, which in turn is going to affect orientation of the ball and socket joint, which is going to affect your range of motion in the pressing. So for me, kind of what I was doing is as I exhale, I'm reaching with my right hand. It's going to get left ab wall engaged. As I inhale, I'm reaching with my left and actually pulling my left rib cage back. Since my hands are seated on the surface or set on the surface, my hands aren't moving, but if I put pressure into it at that time, rather than the serratus anterior working to pull the shoulder blade forward, it's going to work to pull the rib cage back, which changes the surface joint sit on. So I'm keeping a little bit of protraction, making sure I'm keeping pressure even through the base of my pinky and thumb on here. As I exhale, I'm reaching with my right arm. As I inhale, I'm reaching with my left. So you're basically just pumping the rib cage. People kind of forget, so we've got 2 lungs in us, and they basically work to inflate air. They inflate us. You can imagine having 2 balloons on the side of you, but those balloons are not the same. And so as we work to kind of get those recalibrated, it can change the surface I sit on a little bit. I always feel like whatever weight Dave is using for something, I have to use at least half that. It's like a little contest we have going that we've had it running for years. It kind of started with our deadlifts. Is it like, well, if he's doing that and I weigh roughly half of he does, if I'm not using at least half, there's something wrong. Or if he's not using at least double. So it's just kind of something funny we've done over the years together. So this is the first day we pressed together in a minute. It's gonna be a good time.
You okay with the angle?
Yeah, I might bump it up 1.
Okay.
This is a different angle than I've been using for the last couple weeks. It's a different bench. So I might bump it up 1 just to try to be a little bit more consistent. I've been using the prime benches. I like this one because it's more stable. I just haven't been able to find it when I train on my own.
Good. No. All right.
This is a great example of what I was saying when I was following up for the machine press, that a lot of the men that I work with need more time to kind of open up, whereas for a lot of women, we need more stability work. So especially for Dave, that band is helping him actually pull open a little bit. He's probably going to get way better contraction in a lot of his other sets today, especially if he's working. You see you're working more mid-range here?
Big short, yeah.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Different body types are going to benefit from different structure in terms of manipulating muscle length between short, mid, or lengthened bias. So we have very different body types, which is why I like to start with a little bit of priming work. And he needs a little bit more work to open up before he starts to really hit that contraction. In order for a muscle to fully contract, it has to be able to fully lengthen. So for him, starting light, really letting that lengthen out is going to let him drive full contraction. Whereas for me, I need more of the stability to drive more output. I'm definitely feeling kind of shaky today. One of the big things that you'll notice as you get deep into prep, as the fatigue accumulates, are going to be less stable. The nervous system has a harder time kind of coordinating muscles across joints to drive stability. So right now, with where I'm in prep, I'm okay with that, because as fatigue continues to creep up, I'll take my pressing to a more stable implement, and I'll probably use something like a Smith as my main press. So you want to kind of give yourself a way to pivot if need be. So
You were talking earlier about portions of the range of motion. I like to start with a band on the dumbbell press when I do them first, just because I feel like before I'm super warm, I don't want to load the bottom end of the range of motion so much, like with a Smith press or a free weight dumbbell press. Just leaves the pec and pec tendon a little bit more sensitive. So I've been starting with the band here, and then we'll move on to a Smith press where it's a little more loaded at the bottom. So I've done a couple of really light warm-ups. I did the first set of 8. I'll do one more feeder set here and then work up to a top set.
So for someone like Dave, who's got a lot of mass through here, one of the big deficits I see as a PT is if they can't get into this kind of range of motion, that ball will steer forward in the socket. That's where you're going to see a lot of irritation with the bicep tendon, labrum. People think about the rotator cuff, all of that. So as much as for him, he thinks that it feels like it opens up that pec a little bit. The other thing it does is open up glenohumeral or shoulder motion in this direction, so that again he's in a better position. All right, let's go, Davo.
Easy 8.
Steady. Good. Knuckles up. Good power. Yes. So my body weight right now is definitely sub 140. I'm only weighing in on my checking days, just because otherwise looking at my body weight just jacks with my brain a little bit. I'm actually kind of hoping I stay a little bit heavier the rest of this prep than I did in Chicago. It'd be a really good indicator And so far, things are looking good. I mean, we didn't really have a lot of time in between Chicago and starting prep for the O, but I feel like I made really good use of that time. So if I come in fuller, a little bit bigger, that'd be obviously ideal. So I'm gonna grab a little chalk because I'm shaky, the stims are kicking in, and want to make sure I can grip well. So what I was saying to Dave just now is making sure he's not getting too aggressive on his eccentric. If you're a bigger guy, you've got a lot of mass here. If you get too aggressive on your eccentric, you're probably gonna end up losing your position a little bit, and then kind of internally rotating, which is gonna make it really hard to actually get your press. So for Dave, you'll notice that if he gets too aggressive and bottoms out, he kind of does this, and his elbows drop and change position, and then his triceps end up falling out on the rep. So for him, staying right in that sweet spot, more range of motion isn't better. Sometimes taking it too deep is actually going to keep you more limited in how many reps you can get. Obviously, like, yes, you want to keep full range of motion, but more isn't always better. You want to keep it where you're lengthening the intended muscle without getting, aggressive and bottoming out the joint or getting range from the joint. What?
So don't take it too deep.
Correct.
It's not what she said.
God, man, my brain is slow today. Did you just make it that's what she said joke and I missed it?
Over your head.
Wow, that's when you know I'm off. Feel that bench under you. Yes, controlled. Steady. Good. That's you. Finish shot. Control it. Do you feel like you amped up too much?
No, not strong enough. I'm actually a little disappointed in that. I got 7 last week, probably a cleaner 7. So try one more time next week. If I can't beat it, then probably rotated something else. You want to help on this one?
Yeah, if you don't mind putting one on my lap, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You want to stable on the
Yeah.
chicken?
It's always really important to ask your, if you're spotting or if someone is spotting you, make sure you're clear on what you want from them. So I trained with Dave enough to know that he knows that I like a little stability on the first rep, just at the bottom. But then from there, he kind of lets me take over.
Do you want a bunch of help on the first one too, or just the stabilization?
Somewhere between. I think the stabilization will be fine.
All right. Good?
Yep.
All right, come on, Danny.
Oh.
Get in this.
1, 2.
There we go, good. Strong. Good depth. Good, get that line, press in the middle. Get that line. Good. Got it. You got plenty more. Yeah, at least 2. Good. Yep, more.
Man, I felt super squirrely in the bottom there of like every rep. So I'm not super happy with those, but I'll take it. Especially with how I'm feeling right now. I tend to find that my pressing strength drops off before anything else in prep. So to be progressing, again, when I've been in prep basically since February, a little over 6 weeks out now, I'm pretty happy with that. Can always be better, but I'll take a couple back off sets of the band just to drive more stability. So for Dave, he's using the band more to bias where he wants the overload. For me, I like the band as a way to force all the muscles that surround the ball and socket, again, very mobile joint, to co-contract and stabilize. You can see in my top set, that stability at the bottom is what kind of got in my brain a little bit and prohibited me from getting what I wanted to rep-wise.
All right, so top set, we got 7 reps to 150s. I'm gonna go down quite a bit to the 120s and try to do a super controlled set. I'll probably pause a little bit in both parts of the range of motion. So if you're doing a banded press, don't put it behind your back like this. Crisscross it one time, then it won't slip.
Feel yourself. Less range. Even less. There. Knuckles up. That's it. Let's go. Find your fucking feet, dude. Come on. Yes. Yes, I'm with you. Let's go. Together. 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 Because they don't always grab the dumbbell in the same place. And that's going to end up changing your wrist position. And I was just thinking about why I felt so weird that last set. And I think it's because I had the dumbbell in a different spot on the handle. So it changes kind of the eccentric, and that's again where you're going to lose control.
Good. Not too far. There we go.
So I left a little in the tank on that one intentionally, thinking I was going to do one more back off. So I just got to decide if I want to leave the weight there, if I want to pull back to 55s or even 50s. I've very rarely regretted taking things too light, especially in a pressing movement. But I have often regretted taking things too heavy. That said, I feel better today than I thought I was going to, so.
Yeah, take 60s again.
60s it is. Dave tends to be more conservative and smarter with weight selection. I tend to be kind of the asshole who puts too much loads more on the bar.
So if I say go heavy, go heavy.
Yeah, so if he says take the heavier weight, usually you stick the heavier weight. I'm probably going to gas out here pretty quick. My triceps usually stall out before my pecs and delts do. And they are feeling it. So let's see what I can do.
Come on. Aggressive. Come on. There we go. Good. Press towards the middle. Good. Been moving, Danny. Good. I'm with you. Yes. Good.
I'm not getting intra-workout carbs anymore, but I have, I feel like I've still been able to get a pretty decent pump pretty much every session just by managing salt intake and timing things well. So I have a non-stem, like vasodilating pre-workout that I take, but I also take a scoop of Versus Trashman WTF. I take half in the car as I'm like on the way here, I put it in a tumbler and sip. I also add some into my water, and I have a Propel in here. The Propel and the electrolytes is just going to help with muscle contraction. And again, salt is one of the biggest things you can do to help kind of maintain a pump. Really, really important just because it keeps the tissues hydrated, so especially deep into prep, if you want to stay healthy over an injury, staying as hydrated as you can is going to be a really, really big part of that.
How much sodium do you think we each eat per day?
Oh my God.
Like 15, 20 grams?
We're those disgusting people that I think people would look at our food and be like, oh.
Yeah, I think it's like triple the RDA. We probably eat sodium at least. But it's Texas, and this gym is not very well air conditioned, so you sweat out most of that anyway. And then we'll both do cardio in the garage or outside, so a lot of sweat, you need a lot of salt.
I usually start with a high incline. Now for me, sometimes I'm kind of swapping the order of things up today, and there is still some specificity because I'm still hitting a high incline here. So my dumbbell presses, I use the exact same bench, the exact same angle, all of that. I took my high incline machine that I usually do first, and I'm going to hit high incline Smith today. So you don't always, just because you're changing the order of things or changing machines a little bit, doesn't mean the whole session is totally different. As long as you're hitting the same angles or pretty close to it, a lot of times you're going to get a similar stimulus. So something that Dave does really well is if you look at where the bar rests in his hand, he's getting pressure through his whole hand, through the bar. A lot of people, when they press, they end up only using part of their hand. Not only you're going to prohibit force production, but that small contact point does a lot to send signals to the nervous system on how to stabilize, again, very mobile joint. So if you compare Dave's press, he's more of that false grip. For me, I go full hand. But you also notice I have a hard time getting that whole pinky side involved. So again, watch his whole hands And you're gonna see he's got his whole hand involved, everything about where the bar is sitting in his palm. He's getting forced straight through his forearm. Just a little too short. I'm gonna take a set because I think plate quarter will probably be my top set. I definitely did not take enough rest and enough time to set up on my last set. So plate quarter 10 didn't feel very good. I didn't move the bench back as much as I need to. And I have been moving pretty quickly. So what I'll probably do today here for top set and then a variation of an intensity technique or an extended set. One thing that we've been using a lot is what we call a Chris pause technique, and that is from Chris Edmonds, who is really one of John Meadows' probably closest proteges. It's basically a regular rest pause, but then after that third mini set, you strip about 40% of the weight off, 40 to 60. You just kind of keep going until you can't. And then from there, you can do things like add ISO holds in the mid-range or in the bottom, or depending on the implement, kind of be selective with what you do. But I'm going to see how this top set goes and go from there.
Aggressive, good.
I did talk to him.
That's an overshoot. Way too much for me today. My shoulders are a weak point. I'm a really strong chest presser. Most incline pressing I do, if it's a lower incline, I'm really strong on because I have so many years of heavy benching behind me, and I'm a really pec dominant bencher. I bench wide grip with my use of powerlifting. As soon as I go into a movement that's more shoulder dominant, it's like, see you later.
All right, come on.
Yeah. Make your sound. You want this card? Let's go. Make your upper max or lower. Come on, Dave. Steady. Oh, yeah. Yes. Good. Stay.
That's what I love about it.
Yes, through that. All the way. Since I'm pulling the weight back on what I thought was going to be our top set here, I'm going to try and be very intentional with what I'm moving here. One of the things that I coach a lot of my athletes, because I have so many who come from a strength sport background, is making sure you're not just moving from A to B, but you're actually contracting the muscle. That doesn't mean don't be strong. It doesn't mean stay in like some weird pumpy rep range. But what it will do is add a lot of density in muscles. It's going to increase motor unit synchronicity. It's really going to make things kind of fire. I hate the word fire. It's going to make them synchronize together in a way that's going to help build density, synchronicity, a lot of the neural recruitment patterns that we want with regards to potentiating strength. So more force production is always going to add more size too. So I don't have a number I'm going to go for here. I'm just going to make these quality reps and see what I can do. Maybe leave 1 or 2 in the tank so that I can hit an extended set on back offset.
There we go, good. Good. They're moving faster than they feel. Come on. Good. Good, Danny. Yeah, you got more. Come on.
Huh. Wow. I'm getting my ass handed to me today. All right, so back off will be at a plate, and then I'll do an intensifier at probably the equivalent of 115. I think one thing that's useful to talk about too is like what's happening to today. Kind of getting rocked by weight fit. I mean, in the off season and even in the Puerto Rico trap, I was hitting much heavier weight. Don't let it, don't let it make the rest of your session a bad session. All you can do is pivot and adjust and think about what's the best thing you can do in the moment, what's the best thing you can do that day, and work your ass off at the things that you know you can work hard at. Anything you'd add to that?
You have a good attitude about it. I get more pissy than that, but
I think we've switched on that though.
yeah.
He used to be the one that had the good attitude, and I'd be the one where I really identified as being super strong. So if I had a session where I wasn't strong, it was like,
Yeah.
yeah. So we flip-flopped a little bit.
We both come from powerlifting, so we're we've had to not be so obsessed with progressive overload on every session, on every movement, and I especially have, but I've kind of changed my training style a little bit in the last few months, and it's really paid a lot of dividends. I'm looking better and looking fuller, so I'm gonna run with it. All right, so that last set I did was 5 reps, and the 5th was very shaky, so that's about as low as I'd ever go on a rep range. So I've taken the weight down quite a bit here for this set. I think I'm gonna do a rest pause, so hopefully get at least 10 on the first round, and then we'll see what I get from there. So I'll go to near failure probably 3 times.
Yes. Good. Yeah, buddy. Good, come on, again. Another, let's go. 1. And steady. Settle. Through. Yes. Good. Hour, Dave. Good. 1. Come on, get in this. Feet. Yes. Good. Yes, through that.
Yeah, I think that was about 20, 25 seconds between rounds there, which is slightly less than I usually aim for. Usually if Danny wasn't counting, I would take about 15 deep breaths, which ended up being at least 30 seconds, but I wanted to keep it a little bit shorter, make it a little bit more challenging. But I think as long as you're getting like 20 seconds or so, you're probably serving the purpose well. The point of rest pause is so that you hit failure or near failure once, get a bunch of stimulating reps that way, and then every time after that, you're already under enough fatigue that every rep you do on the subsequent rounds it's in a high state of fatigue. You know, it's those reps where you're barely getting it. So they're all stimulating reps.
I felt great. Like I had a plate on here and it felt like it flew. When I took just over a plate as one of my work sets, after kind of overreaching a little bit, it felt awful. So I think one really good point for people too is just making sure that if you overshoot and you need to pull back, again, I've hardly ever regretted actually taking the weight down substantially. If you're thinking about adding another 10 or not, if you've overshot so many other things that session, don't add the 10. Add your reps, get a pump, get really good work in, and make sure it's something you can build off of in the next 2 weeks. So this is way lighter for me. I think when I was in Puerto Rico prep, on a little bit lower incline, I was taking like 255s.
Oh yeah.
For sets of like 8 to 10. This is a steeper incline, so it's more delt than pec, which again, is not my strong muscle group. So this for me is really humbling. But it's also something that I know if I nail this, it's gonna give me a long runway to progress so that when I do switch from having dumbbell pressing as my main movement to this is my main movement, I'm acclimated to the range of motion, my nervous system's acclimated, my tissues are acclimated, my joints are acclimated, and I'll basically be ready to hit the ground running with this, taking it heavier. So set yourself up for success. Think longer than just one session.
Okay, strong and rack. There we go.
Oh man.
Yeah, they're still moving. Good. Go. Drive it up. There we go. Good, Danny.
Ha!
There we go. Come on. Come on.
Yeah.
Good.
It's one of those movements where like right off the bat, as soon as I unrack and start the eccentric, I can tell it's just hitting the point of the range, and the overload is in the point of the range where I'm weakest. So right now it's a good thing this is not my main movement because I'd be artificially limited quite a bit. But I'm hoping that a couple weeks here is going to set me up for some acclimation so that, again, I'm ready to roll for a couple weeks. So I'm going to pull the weight back a lot and probably do a rest pause set. I'm super fatigued by this point in the session. I've done a lot of pressing and it's all been pretty close to failure. So 0 expectations here, but it'll be good. Now I'll go back to, so Dave was just asking if I want to go back to the machine I've been using, which is the hammer strength high incline. After this, he's going to do a flat press.
I meant, did you want to go to the hammer flat rather than the
Oh,
Jumlico?
doesn't matter.
Right.
We may go to different machines after this. We'll see. I'm going to try whatever he does, see how it feels. But again, we have different strength curves. If you look at our anthropometrics, like our arm lengths, our humeral lengths, our forearm lengths, how broad we are, our range of motion is totally different. So it's part of why one training program or one machine might feel great for one person and not for another.
Yeah, Danny was talking about how we sometimes get pissy about losing some strength. I actually, in the off season, I'll just chalk it up to maybe it was just a bad day and know that I can't make a progression every time. During prep, I'm so concerned about losing strength that I get a little bit madder actually, which is kind of the opposite of how a lot of people treat it. People assume that you're going to lose strength during prep, but for the most part, I really don't think you should. Not up until the last few weeks, or if you're, in Danny's case, you've been prepping the entire year, then it's understandable. But you know, I've only been prepping for 7 or 8 weeks. We started early. I still have plenty of food in me. There's no reason to lose strength up until really the last 2 or 3 weeks.
So for me, this feels like it's practically overhead, which is probably why it feels so terrible. But I think if I'm going to keep rolling with this, what I'd probably do is drop the incline down 1 notch and take my dumbbell pressing just a little bit lower, just so anything that I'm doing that's either a higher incline or more shoulder bias is already a little bit more stable or has a more fixed path, like the hammer high incline or like the super incline is what they call it, I think. But for today, this is good. So I don't know. I'll probably reconvene with Chris after today and see if we want to reconfigure things a little bit. Right now, I have a push day, pull day tomorrow. I'll pump your leg day I do either Wednesday or Thursday. And then my other upper day this week is kind of a combination of back and shoulders with a little bit of chest. I might just make that more shoulder focused and make today a little bit more chest tricep focused. But really, on me, everything needs to come up. So as long as I'm hitting things with frequency and with good intent. So this is our friend Reagan. Reagan treats his ass off. Like, I've seen very few people take the way that Reagan does during sets. I watch him train and I'm like, man, I am not going hard enough, which is kind of saying something. So.
All right. Let's go. Come on. I got it. Stay in it. Good.
Yeah, Dave.
Stay in it. Let's go. Come on. Let's go. Let's go.
All the way through.
Come on.
Knuckles forward.
You got it.
Yes.
I got it. Let's go. I ain't touching it. Let's go.
Finish that fucker, Dave.
Come on. All right. Let's go. Come on. Yeah. There we go.
Let's go, Reagan. You want it. This is where it starts. All the way. Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you got more.
Through it.
There we go. More. Come on. There we go.
Don't quit on that. Let's go. Dig.
There we go. Good. That's you. Come on. Come on. Yeah. That's good. All right.
1, 2, 3.
There we go. All right. Good depth. Good. Just there we go.
Oh. Nope.
Yep. Push. Yeah.
Man, I do not have it today.
We're going to the hammers.
Yeah, I probably will. I'm going to switch implements. I think the 11 to 12 cardio sessions per week is really tanking my strength. I'm happy with my dumbbell pressing. That went really well today. Given I switched the order of just about everything else, I'm on new machines. I overshot a lot. If I'm honest, I'm really trying to stay positive about this session, but I'm not real happy with it. So I'm gonna go do something that I know I can work my ass off at, which is I'm gonna go to the hammer super incline. I'm gonna band it. I'm gonna have to pull weight back from where I've been because it's late in the session, but it'll allow me to work a little bit more top end. And I love that thing. It lets me get good output and it lets me work hard. So I'm a little frustrated, which means I'm gonna go do something I know I can absolutely kill.
Good. Come on. Come on, lightweight. Light. Come on. Push. Press. 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 There we go. Yeah. Good.
So when I've been doing this early in the session, my top set is usually 2 plates and a quarter. First set of like 8 to 12. My back off has been somewhere around the range of like plate quarter 10 plus a band for 10 to 12. Just for reference. So I know it's late in the session, but it's really hard for me. It's something I struggle with. To have to pull back this much on pretty much everything. I was really calm earlier, now I'm just kind of pissed. So our camera guy just mentioned, he was like, it's funny watching you guys get upset because that's heavy weight, but it's funny because it's not heavy to you. And it's like, well, yeah. I mean, if every time things felt a little bit heavy, we kind of stopped, we wouldn't have added the strength that we have or the size that we have over the years. I mean, I think that's the nice thing about having the history of powerlifting training is like you just get used to, yes, it feels heavy and you just keep going. So I think in bodybuilding, you know, there's always that itch to add more. There's always that itch to add another rep, to add more weight, to just get better. Like do something today to get better than you were when you started the session. And I hate feeling like I'm, you know, 2/3 of the way through a session and I'm like, did I fucking get better? I don't know. You missed it. I just got. So normally I would take a top set or a back off or some variation of the top set and then a back off as a, you know, intensity technique. What I'm going to do here is just do clusters of 5 to 6 until I can't. And I would expect somewhere from 3 to 5 kind of mini sets. It's a great way to consolidate work, to get good work in with lighter weight. If I need to, I'll strip the 10s off. I really don't want to. But I have a feeling that my triceps are going to give out pretty quickly here just because they're already fried from overreaching. So this is purely to get some work in, get a little bit of a pump, and feel like I could do something hard that it wasn't just a, you know, an all-out kind of fail, which outside of dumbbell pressing feels like that's what everything else has been today. So again, way lighter weight than I'm used to, but I'm gonna find a way to make the set part. The 10s. He's used to training at like 7 a.m. It's like 1:30 right now. To me, this is like as empty as I've ever seen Destination. So it's interesting because...
I don't do crowds. No.
And you look at his training online and it's always on point. It's stellar. But it's because he's in here almost by himself. Not because, but being in here by himself allows him to really like dial in and focus. So just interesting.
Like, so I'm a little annoyed, like Danny said. I guess I'm kind of spoiled because I usually train here at like 6:30 or 7. I have a regular job. I work from home that's another story. I usually work from home, or I have been. So I have to be back at my desk around 9:30, which is why I'm usually in here so early. We arranged for us to be trained together today, but even this little crowd, which I guess isn't much for Destination, is a bit much for me. So I kind of was waiting on equipment for a little while. I lost a pump, so I'll try to do a few high rep sets here, go into one really hard, big, like probably a drop set, and that'll be it for chest. Did a few feeder sets. That last one was a little bit harder than I thought it would be. For the final one, I'm going to do a mechanical drop set, which the Prime equipment makes really easy. So by mechanical drop set, I mean the weight will change a little bit, but what will also change is how difficult the exercise is in any given portion of the range of motion. So I'm going to start on the number 1 setting, which is the mid setting for any Prime piece. Then I'll drop the weight a little bit, but then also go to the more lengthened setting, 5. And usually with any muscle, especially with pecs, you'll fatigue in the shortened range first. So I won't be able to contract all the way against as much weight once I'm fatigued for the first round. But by going to the more lengthened setting, I'll be able to get more output and basically drop less weight than I would if I just stayed on the number 1 setting. That's it for the chest portion of the workout. Now it's on to shoulders. So lately, everything I've done for shoulders has been pretty pumpy, high volume. I've ditched shoulder pressing for now, but that is why we did the extra high incline press a couple exercises ago, because it still gets a little good bit of front delt. So I'm going to start with rear delts, partially because they're super important, but also because we're already on the pec deck, so it makes it easy. And I'm going to do like sets of 20 to 30 and then superset it with a spider crawl, which you'll see in a minute. So those spider crawls look like kind of a piddly pointless exercise, but I encourage you to try them if you never have. It'll get a huge pump in your shoulders, side and rear delts, and it's really good for shoulder health too. Danny could probably give a better explanation as to why, but it'll give you a big shoulder pump and your shoulders will feel better for it. I kind of hate having to put my grubby fingers all over that window, but I don't really see a normal wall around here where I can do the same thing.
So a lot of times with delt development, I like to go off the cues that we hear on the internet, but ultimately it's going to come down to how the ball sits in the socket of your shoulder. And if you're someone where the ball sits differently than someone else, like if you look at Dave, put your arm hang, his structure is different than mine. So for him to get his side delt or rear delt lined up with the line of pull against the resistance is going to be different than the cues that I need. For Dave, he can start across his body on something like a heavy swing, and he can stay somewhat in front of him, and he gets side delt. If I do that, because I'm so narrow, I end up getting more kind of rear and almost a little bit of rotator cuff. So I have to reach down and out. So if you're looking to develop your delts, one of the best things you can do is actually look at from the side, visualize that ball and socket, and visualize how it sits. Because how that sits ultimately makes everything else kind of doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is how you can align that ball and socket against the resistance. Rear delt training is a great way to kind of pick that apart too, because the degree of rotation that you're in for something like a cable fly versus a reverse pec deck is going to be different for Dave than it is for me. We'll show you his reverse pec deck and mine here in a minute. So Dave's rear delts have come up quite a bit. Now he's done a really good job of lining himself up, but he could probably actually stand to be a little bit better. To me, it still looks like he's getting quite a bit of tricep, because if you look at his rear delt here, Dave, take your elbows and turn them up towards the ceiling just a little bit and scoot yourself a little bit higher on the bench. So personally, I think he probably needs to raise his seat up just a little bit, because he's really putting a lot of tension right through here, rather than if you, again, align where the rear delt is. So once he finishes the set, I'll see if I can get him set up a little bit differently and see if that changes what he feels. One thing to note too is if you look at the ball and socket here, he's actually getting some rotation as he goes through the motion. So he's supersetting, I forgot. There can be a couple different purposes to this movement. One can be for more kind of hypertrophy or fatigue related kind of metabolic stimulus. The other could be for more PT. For someone like Dave, ideally, we'd have him in a wall. We'd have his rib cage and sternum back a little bit. The other way you can modify this is he stayed with his hands pronated the whole time. You can supinate as you come down and force some external rotation demand on the area. So you're actually getting more of an arc rather than just this. So some people, when they do rear delts, they like to stay protracted the whole time. I tend to find that if you're someone who works at a desk, you can stay protracted, but you're not actually going to get as much of rear delt as you want. So you must want to think about pulling in an arc here without getting too much trapped. So it's staying protracted, but also pulling up a little bit. So you're getting into a range of motion that's just delt, not trapped. So what I was going to have you do is pull a little bit, pronate a little more, so you're a little bit more palm down and coming across that joint, so you're pulling up a little bit.
Okay. That?
Yeah.
You good?
How does it feel?
Better. A lot more rear delt. I have to go lighter.
So what he just said about needing to go lighter is usually a good indication that you're getting the muscle a little bit more targeted. especially in a movement like this. Rear delt's not a huge muscle. And one of the big mistakes I see people make when they're trying to train rear delts is they end up kind of hanging on the rotator cuff, which doesn't do great things for shoulder health. So if you're going to train rear delts, you're going to train high volume or high frequency, either one of those, you want to make sure you're actually hitting the intended muscle. Little tweaks in setup, and if you can be knowledgeable about your mechanics, it's going to go a long way. So if you're someone who works at a desk, you might want to take a look at the degree of rotation that your shoulder sits in at baseline. If you live in kind of an internally rotated versus externally rotated, most of us live kind of internal. And think about the interplay between the elbow and the hand and how that's going to be turned in versus neutral or even turned out. Good.
That was much better.
What was the biggest thing that you noticed?
I think usually I feel them a bit in the triceps, like you were saying. So yeah, I pretty much took all that tension off the tricep and put it in the rear delt.
So people get triceps often because they forget that the long head of the triceps actually attaches to the infraglane tubercle on the shoulder blade. So it attaches on the shoulder blade. So if you're getting a lot of shoulder blade movement, you're probably going to get some tricep involvement. You want to think about pivoting just across the ball and socket as much as you can. Change your setup so the only thing that moves mostly is ball and socket. You're going to get some scat movement, but you want to think about keeping a majority of it, again, across the joint, across the muscle that you're intending to hit. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of synergists, meaning muscles that are in the mid-back, upper back, kind of all of those groups. So again, quick recap on what we changed for Dave. We changed his elbow angle. We changed his actual range of motion. We changed how high up he's starting on the actual seat. So he's thinking about pulling into an arc, almost like if you're benching, you want to think chest up or chest tall. Similar, but a little bit different. The major goal there was to make sure that his rear delt is what's aligned against the resistance and he's not getting as much tricep. So on the first step that he filmed that I was here for, there was a lot of tricep going on. We just changed his setup. We brought him up a little bit. We had him cue his elbows up a little bit more, then change his hand position a little and stay a little more protracted. His mid-back is so strong from so much deadlifting and pulling over the years that for him to hit rear delt without getting too much synergist work is going to take a lot of intent on his end. So the stronger you are, especially if you're an athlete who is a strength athlete formerly, you're going to want to make sure you're very intentional about your setup and execution, because we're really, really quick to fall into our old patterns that are going to recruit all of our big muscles rather than our small ones. So bodybuilder, those small ones are a lot of times just going to create the shape.
All right, guys, that wraps it up for chest and a little bit of the shoulder work. We got a bit more to do, but in the meantime, thank you for tuning in. Please let us know down below in the comments. See us on Instagram, send us a DM. What else do you want to see?
You like, subscribe, leave us comments. Again, we love getting questions from you guys. There's so many different sources of information. We really want to make sure that if you have questions, if you see something that you agree with, disagree with, have another question on, drop in a comment below. We love hearing from you guys. We want to make sure we're putting out more content again for you. So subscribe. You can follow us both on Instagram. Dave's getting ready for nationals. I'll be at the Olympia. Follow along. You kind of see how we progress. And if you have questions, leave them below.
Thanks, guys.